Oh, hello YouTube. Today on The Naughty Librarian, we are recapping and reviewing Thunderball by Ian Fleming. Thunderball is book 9 of the James Bond series, and low-key, it's my favorite of the series. This one is quite funny, I would say. It makes a point of being humorous. There's a lot of really funny little bits in it. There's also a lot of really yikes stuff in it, but really that's to be expected at this point. This was put out in 1961. There was a lot of yikes going around. So besides like the yikes, it is a really fun, daring adventure story. It takes place in the Bahamas. There's like missing nuclear warheads. This is the first book that actually introduces Spectre and Blofeld. They did not exist before this book. And I'm not going to get into all of the controversy around Thunderball, but like, hoo boy, if you Google it, there's a lot. But anyway, let's get into what actually goes on in Thunderball. As always, we're going to start out with our yikes factor, our yikes disclaimer here, because hoo boy, this is a doozy at times. It does deal with other sensitive issues like substance abuse, PTSD. These have been covered in many James Bond books. I don't know when the term PTSD was necessarily invented, but James has elements of his personality that scream PTSD because James has seen some shit. And also, you know, drinks a whole bottle of bourbon and 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Like, substance abuse. The biggest yikes factor here is definitely like the misogyny and sexual harassment. And it's really strange because James at times has really kind of enlightened views of women, and sometimes he's just a pig. Like, here's an example. James would never consider calling a woman like a slut or a whore or something. Like, the thought would never cross his mind to do that unless she's literally a sex worker. Then, like, that's her profession. He's never degraded a woman for having a sex life. He's like, her body count is her business. I don't care. But on the other hand, he makes comments about, oh boy, women drivers, am I right? Amongst, you know, getting a little handsy-feelsy with a nurse and, you know, the implication kind of a thing. And I'm like, oh, this is like, I lost words. That's how I felt about it. So anyway, yikes factor complete. Let's talk about the plot. So the book starts off with James mid-bender, okay? Like I said earlier, he's smoking like a chimney and having at least 10 drinks a night. Like, he's a hot mess. Essentially, he's been in desk duty for too long. He hasn't had a mission, and it makes his skin crawl. Like, he can't stand sitting still because the only place he feels normal is when he's like in immediate danger. Like, realistically, he needs intensive therapy. We're not gonna go into that right now. He's just basically self-medicating to a degree where like people at the office are like, yikes, bro. Like, maybe cut back like a little. Like, people are concerned, including his boss, M, who gets like, you know, James's latest physical report and is like, James, you are a toxic heap of a human. This is terrible. Like, I'm surprised you're not dead now. So he's like, okay, James, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna go for 2 weeks to this like detox center, and you're gonna regain your peak fitness, and you're gonna, you know, get all the toxins out and drink the carrot juice and stuff. All the stuff that James would just hate to do. And James really doesn't want to go. He's trying to figure out a way out of it. And Emma's like, listen, if you don't go, I'm taking your 00 status away. So like, go get some help. So James is like, fine, I'll go. So he goes to this hippy dippy herb garden commune full of the elderly. And also he's hangry because they don't have like red meat or anything that he's accustomed to eating. They just have like juices and like a detox food. And he's like, oh my God. The only other guy at the club that seems kind of out of place is this man Count Lippe. And James meets Count Lippe by literally yanking a nurse away from getting hit by his car. So that tells you a lot about how Count Lippe lives his life. So already James is like, this fucking guy? Like, he just doesn't like him. So later on that same day, James, he's getting a massage, and at the table next to him, none other than Count Lippe. And James, you know, he's just looking around, and he sees like this strange tattoo on Count Lipe's wrist, and he's like, wonder what that is. So like he calls up HQ after the massage, and he's like, hey, there's this little symbol, what is it? And they tell him, oh, that's like a symbol of the Red Tongue crime syndicate. And James is like, I get it, good to know. But this was actually just a really boneheaded move. Mind you, he didn't even use like a phone in his room. He's in the freaking lobby doing like spy shit. And obviously Count Lipe is like right there. Like, you know, when the person you're talking about enters the room and he hears all of this conversation and he's just like, oh, this bitch is looking me up. Okay. The next day, James, he's getting another massage, and it's from the hot nurse. Her name is Patricia. And she's at work right now. This is her job. This is not a sexual situation. And James is just projecting major tiny dick energy here because she's not acting like she like is attracted to him. And he can't fathom this. He can't handle this woman not being interested in him. It's like gross. And he just grabs her and kisses her, which is even grosser. That is assault. And she's like, oh, like she very nearly slaps him, but she's like, I'm at work. I can't slap a patient. So she is very professional. So she's like, all right, you know what? Let's do something different. So she takes James over to this other room and has a machine in it. And it's like a torture rack, but essentially it just like stretches your spine out, and she has to strap him down. So, you know, his hands are like, her hands are where she can see them, and his feet are strapped. He's subdued. So she's like, all right, 10 minutes, I'll be back. So he's just in there getting his spine stretched. But this is the perfect moment for Count Lipe to strike. And he's like, oh, you're gonna look me up? Fine. He turns the machine up to like 11, and it's just like, it's like going crazy. James's spine is getting yanked, and he's like in so much pain. It's like torture. And so he's like, and so he screams and just passes out. However, luckily he did scream because Patricia hears like someone screaming and she's like, what's happening? She goes in, oh my God, turns off the machine, freaking out. She's like, oh my God, I'm gonna lose my job. I broke a patient. What am I gonna do? So she like takes him out to recovery. James, he wakes up a little bit later. Nothing is seriously injured. Like he's injured, but like he's gonna be fine. You know, walk it off, one of those things. So James, he takes a day to like recuperate, and then, you know, it's back to regular detox trying to treatments at this health spa. He's getting more massages and he's drinking his juices, and surprisingly, like James is actually starting to feel good. Like he's like, wow, I didn't realize how shitty of shape I was in. It's working. James is starting to feel rather chipper all of a sudden. In fact, he's feeling so good, somehow he manages to seduce Nurse Patricia. And it's just this moment of the book, you're like, this was written by a man. Yeah, this woman makes no sense. He assaulted her. He like ruined her day at her job. He's gross, and she's all of a sudden into him. So now that James is like feeling physically good, and you know, he has like, I guess, post-nut clarity. He's like, okay, time to get some payback on Lipe. Because like, how very dare Count Lipe do that to him? You know, the gall, the cheek, the nerve, the audacity, and the gumption. That's how he feels about this guy. So James like just kind of spies on Lipe for the next couple days. He like gets his routine down. And then he finds his perfect time to strike, because Lipe, he's in one of those like personal sauna machines where like just your head sticks out. So he's like captive in this thing. James, he sneaks in the room and he like cranks the heat up. Suck it, bro. And he leaves. So it's kind of a dick move back. And at this point, the book shifts over to our villains. We get the big introduction we've been waiting for. We meet Spectre and Ernst Stavro Blofeld, our main villains. We finally meet them. So all of Spectre is at their bad guy board meeting. So Blofeld, he's running the meeting, and he's like, first of all, I have some unsavory business I need to take care of, because like apparently on the last like big crime caper they committed, it was like a kidnapping of a teenage girl, and she was supposed to be returned in the same condition they grabbed her in because her parents paid like, you know, the ransom. However, it turns out that this girl was likely violated during her captivity. And Blofeld isn't necessarily mad about the assault. He's mad because he's like, you know, this was our good word here. We said we would give the daughter back in the condition we took her in, and we didn't. Like, this makes us look like assholes. We look like amateur fucking crooks. We are gentlemen criminals. We produce high quality criminal endeavors. How dare? How dare one of you fuck this up? So to fix the situation, Blofeld, he hits a button on a keypad, and what do you know? Number 12 gets gruesomely electrocuted in his chair. So, I mean, problem solved, fuck that guy, right? But still, this is a board meeting, and this guy just got electrocuted in the middle of the room. And no one really does anything about it, because there's just gonna be a fried body in the room for the rest of the meeting, because they're back to business now. They're talking about their next criminal endeavor, which is Plan Omega. And Blofeld is irritated that Plan Omega now has a delay, because Count Lippe had to go get in a prank war at a spa, and now he's in the hospital with second-degree burns. But let's talk about Plan Omega. So here's like the gist, okay? First, they're gonna bribe a pilot named Giuseppe Petacci to kill the crew of this military aircraft that's carrying nuclear warheads, and then hijack the plane. Now Giuseppe, he's gonna land the plane at a designated location, and then Spectre will come and kill the witness. They're gonna kill Giuseppe. I mean, Giuseppe doesn't know this. He thinks he's gonna get paid money. Nope, he's just gonna get killed. They're gonna take the nuclear warheads. They now have 2 of them. 3, hide the plane. 4, take off with the nuclear warheads. And 5, hold the world ransom and threaten to destroy a major city unless, you know, a ransom of 100 million pounds is paid. In a nutshell, that is Plan Omega. So now that we've been acquainted with the bad guys and how they operate, let's go back to James. James, he comes back to London from his spa retreat, and he is just walking on air. He feels amazing. He's like at work, he's sitting at his desk, he's doing his paperwork with a smile, and like honestly, it's still freaking people out around the office. Like, they were concerned before when James was a toxic heap, and now he's just so chipper about everything. They're like, where's the body, James? Everyone is really concerned for like the opposite reason now. Like, James's secretary and like Moneypenny and stuff, they're just waiting. They're like, okay, James is gonna snap out of this as soon as he gets a case. Please let a mission come in. And they're just like really needing one of them. And luckily, of course, a case does come in. James, he goes over to M's office and he finds the whole place in a tizzy. Everyone's freaking out because the Prime Minister just got the message from Spectre saying like, hey, we got this plane and the bombs and we're in ransom, we're gonna blow stuff up. You know, it's a bad message to get. Well, everyone's freaking out because they don't know what Spectre is. Like, Spectre is a unique thing because essentially it's like an evil United Nations. Because they have criminals from all different countries and governments that don't work together, and somehow they're all in this like conglomerate together of evil. So everyone's like, what do? We know how to deal with one bad guy. This is like a whole bunch of them. So to kind of create order out of the chaos, English has developed Operation Thunderball, which is basically is 2 parts. 1, retrieve the bomb so they can't blow people up, and 2, figure out who Spectre is. Where James comes into this is that M has a hunch, essentially, that he thinks he knows where the military plane likely landed. Because he you know, he has like little contacts all over the place. And he's like, listen, it's likely in the Bahamas. So I want you to go over there and just like see if anything is suspicious. Are there any new people there? Like, what's going on? Like, just kind of poke your nose in and see what's going on over there. If there's something to this, great. If not, have a good vacation. James accepts the mission and, you know, he goes home, he starts packing. However, it can't ever be that simple for James because a mysterious car had been following him and somehow he hadn't noticed. And guess who it is, everybody? Count Lippe. He's out for revenge. So he's been following James. And as James is driving back to the office, this car pulls up next to him all fast. And James just happens to see a glint out of the corner of his eye. And wouldn't you know, there's a guy pointing a gun at him. And he's like, boom! And he fires and James is like, ah! Luckily, the bullet sails right past him. And before James can even like regroup or anything, the car that shot at him explodes. And James is like, what is going on here? Like, this is a whole lot all of a sudden. But what had happened was, remember how Blofeld was really irritated at Lipe for getting in a prank war? Well, he decided to fire him. So Lipe is out of the equation. Blofeld's done with him. But James doesn't really have time for a whole investigation right now. He goes in, he fills out and debriefs or whatever he has to do, and he's like, all right, I got a plane to catch. So James, he gets on the plane, goes to the Bahamas. And first stop, he goes over to like the governor and the chief of police, and he's like, hey, what's going on the island? Are there any new people? La la la, like give me details. What's the hot goss? And the only like unusual thing going on right now is that there is a literal treasure hunt happening. So like basically this group of like rich old white dudes has a yacht, and then they like keep to themselves all the time, but they're trying to hunt pirate treasure. And it's like a thing that happens from time to time in the Bahamas, and everyone's like, yeah, you know, they're new. They've only been here a couple weeks. And James is like, I'm gonna start my investigation there. So James gives the name of like the owner of the boat and some of his associates and stuff. And he just goes, he leaves, he looks on the town. He's like, all right, let's see if I can find some more evidence. And wouldn't you know, he runs into one of the people he wanted to talk to. It's this woman named Domino. And she makes such an entrance, okay? She's in a fancy car. She literally like speed racers like through the streets. And like comes to a quick stop in front of a cigarette shop because she really needs a pack of smokes. You know, she's like driving all crazy like a race car driver. She's so cool. And she's just like forceful and bossy, and she doesn't take any shit, which is just catnip to James. He loves that. So he's like, oh my gosh, she is so hot. I'm just following her. And so, you know, he goes in the cigarette shop and he introduces himself. He's kind of like putting on his James Bond charm, and it works somehow. He invites her out for a drink, and she's like, yeah, okay, whatever, get in the car. So she goes out of the car, James gets in, she starts driving like a race car driver again over to like this little bar. So they're having their drinks, they're flirting, it's like a whole thing, and they get to talking, and Domino tells James about her guardian, named Emilio Largo, who's the owner of the yacht. And she says guardian, but like realistically, I would say more like a sugar daddy situation, honestly. So that's kind of the vibe that they have. Anyway, she tells him how they just got in town. He has this brand new like state-of-the-art yacht called the Disco Volante, which means flying saucer, by the way. Like it's just kind of silly. But he's on the Disco Volante, and they're like doing a treasure hunt. And she's like, there you go, this is what's going on. I think it's silly, but here we are. And James is like, oh, that's really cool. You know, maybe we'll meet up again. Like, I'd like to, you know, do stuff. You know, put on the charm here. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, Largo, he's throwing a party at the casino tonight. Like, why don't you stop by? It'll be fine. She gets in the car, leaves James. James, he goes ahead and grabs a cab and goes over to the airport because he needs to pick up his CIA contact for this mission. Basically, the CIA and MI6 are working together jointly for this. And guess who it is, everybody? Guess who it is? Felix fucking Leiter. Yes! Like, this party's about to go off, okay? So they start going over the case, and James tells him about, like, the Disco Volante and, like, the treasure hunt, and, like, Felix is, you know, we could go check it out. You know, like, here, I have my camera, but the camera is secretly a Geiger counter. So, like, if there's radiation from, you know, nuclear warheads, we'll be able to tell. So James and Felix, they head over to, like, Largo's, like, beach house. Because he has his yacht, but he also is, like, renting this property. And James is pretending to be, like, you know, a super wealthy businessman. And he's like, oh, Felix over here, don't worry about him. He's my attorney. I want to buy this property you're renting. Is it cool if I, like, look around? And Largo's like, yeah, bro, go ahead. Like, totally cool. Like, hey, you know what? Call my niece, Domino. She'll show you around. It's, like, a great place. He's, like, really friendly and nice. And James is like, wow, that's a great boat. And Largo's like, oh, is it? I haven't noticed. I mean, I could show you around if you want. And James is like, yes, I would very much like a tour of your boat. So he goes on the boat. Largo's still being like a boy with his toys. He's like, oh, look at this. And like, look at that. And like, oh, isn't this cool? Like, he's just being really friendly and like accommodating. He's just a good host at this point. And, you know, they go throughout the whole boat. They make plans to come back and look at the house later. And Felix is checking his camera. nothing's going off on the Geiger counter. So like wherever the bombs are right now, they're not on the boat. So they're like, okay, how about we go take a plane out the next day? We'll fly around and we'll see if we can like find a crash site. Like, where did this plane land, the missing plane? Like, maybe we'll find it from the air. But in the meantime, they have Largo's casino party that evening. So James and Felix go, and they're like scoping out all the people there, seeing if they like recognize everybody. James, he spots Largo and Domino, and they're at a baccarat table. They like play several rounds of baccarat, and like James just keeps winning. He wins every round because James is like an expert card player. And like, frankly, James is also kind of being a dick about it. Like, he doesn't have good sportsmanship. He's a poor winner. So he starts like talking a little bit of shit, and he's like casually dropping in the word specter into the conversation just to see if Largo will have like a reaction to it. He's like, oh, you know, I came over this table and I saw a specter, you know, the specter of defeat. Like, just stupid. So after James wins a whole bunch of Largo's money, and he has noticed Largo kind of react to the word specter, he's like, all right, you know, I'm gonna leave while my luck hasn't run out yet. So he grabs his winnings, he leaves, and Largo's like, hey, Domino, go hang out with James, because this is his niece. You know, one of those situations here. So Domino's like, okay, cool. So they go grab some drinks and they flirt some more and stuff. It's very like kind of cat and mouse, like flirty conversation. And we find out, bombshell, Domino's actual last name is Petacci. That makes her Giuseppe Petacci's sister. That was the pilot that they killed in the beginning of the book. Uh-oh, problems. So James heads out. He has some more investigating to do. Later that night, he gets some scuba gear and he goes diving underneath the Disco Volante. And he's basically just looking at the boat, just seeing, is there anything weird about it? And he does. He finds this underwater door, like on the hull of the ship, where a door should not be. However, having a door on the hull of your boat makes a perfect little pocket to store a nuclear warhead if you had one. So James is like, suspicions confirmed. All right, I'm gonna start swimming back to shore. But of course, things can't be easy for James because he gets attacked by a guy with a spear gun. And James is like, oh no! So he fights the guy. He manages to like stab the guy with his knife. And the guy's like, I'm bleeding. And like, there's a bunch of blood in the water. And we all know what happens when there's blood in the water in the Bahamas, as seen in Live and Let Die, because the barracudas descend. James is like, oh no, I am not doing this again. Swim, 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 swim. He's trying to get away, but alas, it still isn't easy on him. Someone's now throwing grenades off the edge of the boat. They're exploding, and James is like, for fuck's sake. So he's like, he dives deeper underneath the boat. He's under the boat. Like, what are they gonna do? Like, no one's gonna come under here. They're going to assume he got eaten by barracudas too or something. You know, he's just hiding for the time being. And eventually things kind of settle down. No one's throwing grenades. Spear guy got eaten. He's like, all right, swim back to shore. So eventually he does make it back. James, he meets back up with Felix. He's like, Felix, guess what? Largo's boat has a door in the hull and people tried to kill me for being near the boat. Like, something's going on with Largo. I knew it. And Felix is like, yeah, there is, because at the party I spotted this guy and he was an East German physicist named Kotze. Like, why would he be hanging out with these guys unless they needed someone to handle nuclear warheads? Like, this is really suspicious. So they're like, okay, we have something to go on now. Let's make a report. Like, let's go tell our bosses what's going on. So Felix's boss is like, hey, do you want to like a naval submarine? We'll send one over. Like, you can just use it when you need it. So now they have a submarine at their disposal. Like, things escalate quickly. So while they're waiting for, you know, the submarine to come into port, they have to do more investigations. So the next morning, James and Felix borrow a plane. By borrow, I mean they steal a plane. They steal it. Because they're like getting things together, and James is like, oh, the guy's coming. And Felix is like, oh shit. Like, just take off. They're just being bros. Like, this whole plane ride is like the equivalent of like, they fly too close to a military base at one point and they're like signaling on the radio like, hey, get the hell out of our airspace. And Felix is like, it's not, don't worry about it. It's only really a problem if they like fire at us. And James is like, they are firing at us. And Felix is like, oh, I guess they mean it. They leave the airbase and stuff. They're like scoping out girls sunbathing. They're just being bros, and it's actually really funny. But while they are in the air and they're flying over the water, James does spot something unusual, because he spots like a bunch of sharks circling a spot for like no apparent reason. So James is like, I gotta check that out. So Felix, he lands the plane in the water. I guess it was a water plane they stole. So he lands in the water, and James, he puts on some like scuba gear. James, he gets to the bottom, and what does he find? Oh, it's the missing military plane, like right there, including all of the crew's bodies that were just left in the plane and are being eaten by a bunch of octopus. Like, it gets gross for a minute. So he looks around for another minute. He spots this wrist that had a tag on it. So he grabs it, and it was Giuseppe's like ID tag on his wrist. So he grabs that and he puts it in his pocket, and he's like, okay, I'm getting the hell out of here, but before I throw up watching like an octopus eat a guy's face. Like, nope. No, it's too early in the morning for this. So James comes back up, and he's like, oh, well, we have problems. We better get back and report this. So, they fly back to the airstrip, and they land the plane there. And luckily, in the meantime, the governor had stepped in and like pardoned all of the felonies they just committed. So they're like, hey, sorry about your plane, but sucks to suck, bye. And they just leave. So James and Felix, they decide to split up, because Felix did notice some weird tracks leading into an outbuilding on Largo's like beach house. So he's like, I'm gonna go investigate those. And James is like, I'm gonna go find Domino and like see what she's doing. So he connects with Domino on the phone, and they make plans to meet up at this beach. And it's the full like James Bond experience. James is sitting on the sand, and all of a sudden, like Domino just comes out of the waves, and it's all like, wow, one of those moments. But then she's like, God damn it, James, you help me right now. She's really upset. And he's like, what happened? She's like, I stepped on an urchin and the spines are in my foot. So James is like, oh no. So he, he picks her up and he takes her over to the shade. And he proceeds to suck the spines out of her foot. I've got nothing, okay? Like he's literally just sucking on her foot on a public beach. I think there's other ways to get the spine out, but here we are. So once the spines are out of her foot, James, he picks her up again. He carries her over to like the changing room, and then clothes start coming off, and like maybe things happen in the changing room. Ooh. I mean, like, why not? I mean, who knew? Who knew like sucking urchin out of a foot was such an aphrodisiac? But they go have sex in the changing room. So after the sex, James is like, hey, I've got to tell you something, and this is going to suck. I probably shouldn't have had sex with you first, because this is going to suck worse now. But hindsight is 2020 and all that. So he's like, hey, so your brother, Giuseppe, yeah, he's super dead. Largo killed him, and I need your help to stop Largo, or millions of people are gonna die. No pressure, but like, you need to help me. And Domino is like, fuck you. She's really upset with him. She's like, why did we have sex first? Like, because you knew I was gonna be mad? Like, what's wrong with you? But then James explains more of the situation. And Domino is quite, a scrappy little badass. And she really did love her brother a lot. So she's like, okay, I'm going to help you. What do I got to do? Fuck Largo. I don't care. He's my sugar daddy. Fuck him. So James gives her Felix's Geiger counter camera. And he's like, all right, this is what you're going to do. Just go about your day as normal, because you're supposed to be on the Disco Volante tonight. Take the camera, pretend you're taking pictures of like the ocean or whatever. And then, kind of casually go around the boat, and you'll hear a Geiger counter go off. So as soon as you realize the Geiger counter's going off, it means the bombs are on the ship. Go up on deck, and that'll like signal us to get to the boat, because the bombs are there. So they agree on that plan, and they part ways. James, he goes back to meet up with Felix. His lead didn't go anywhere either. So they go meet up with the Manta, which is the naval submarine. It has just arrived. So they go get on a submarine, and they talk to the captain. They brief him about what's going on, because no one told the captain why he was going to the Bahamas. They just told him to go there. He's like, hey, y'all want to tell me why I'm here? And basically right now, all the Manta can do is wait and see. Because they can't move yet, they gotta catch these guys red-handed. So Felix and James, they stay on the Manta for a while, and they're just kind of watching the Disco Volante, because they don't know what direction it's gonna go. If it has the bombs, they're gonna plan on setting one off. That was what Spectre said. They're like, hey, we're gonna set it off, one of them, and if you still don't pay us money, we'll set off the other one in a major city. So 2 options here. 1, the Disco Volante could go towards Miami in the United States and drop the bomb. Or 2, they could stay in the Bahamas and go over to like the naval base area on the Bahamas. And all the while, they're still waiting for Domino to signal them. And she still hasn't appeared on deck, and it's been hours. And James is like really certain that those warheads are on that fucking boat. Like, he's like, I know they're on the boat. I don't know how I know, but like, I know they're on the boat, and it's concerning that Domino hasn't like signaled us yet. Has something happened to Domino? He's really concerned that like, uh-oh, did I get this girl killed? So what had happened was Domino was on the boat, not really acting all that naturally with this camera, because, you know, she doesn't know how to do spy stuff. She's rocking around trying to take pictures, but like the lens cap is on. It's really suspicious. So like one of the crew members is like, what's this about? And he tells Largo, and Largo's like, what you doing? Whoosh, takes her camera, opens it up. Oh, it's a fucking Geiger counter. Poof, knocks her out. When she wakes back up, he's like, where'd you get the camera? And she refuses to talk because she's a badass. And Largo's like, fine. I have to go tell my boss this happened. So he goes, he makes a report to Spectre, and he's like, listen, this is what happened. Someone gave her this thing. There's obviously someone's on to us here. What do you want me to do? And Spectre's like, keep going with the mission. Like, obviously people are around. Everyone in the world is looking for us. Like, it's not unusual that there's like some presence there, okay? This is like to be expected. Just keep acting normal. And in the meantime, why don't you spend some time interrogating Domino further and see if she will actually talk to you. And then when you're done, get rid of the body. So that's exactly what happens. They decide to keep moving on with the plan. Largo visits Domino and tortures her with, they don't put in the torture scene in kind of a fade to black moment, but it's something with like, he's gonna burn her with like a cigar. And like, then there's ice, and I don't really know the process here, but like, she does get burned a lot. So he's burning her as torture. Now it's been hours at this point. James, he's still in the submarine, and he's like, all right, well, we got to move forward with something. Like, this is wasting all of our time. So he comes up with a plan to like intercept the disco, and they have to be real sneaky about it, because if they spook Largo, like, he'll just drop the warheads at the bottom of the ocean and then just sail off and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm hunting for treasure. And he doesn't have the warheads. There's no evidence. He's just going to look innocent. So they need to keep their element of surprise here. So they can't just like bring a submarine to the boat. They're going to have to be sneaky. So James has surmised that the best way the disco would handle planting a warhead would be if they anchor their boat kind of enough distance away, and then they would manually take the warhead underwater, plant it somewhere, and then get back on the boat, sail even further away, you know, like time the fuse essentially. So this is how James would do it. So he's like, this is probably how they're going to do it. So the plan here is to leave the Manta, go underwater. This is gonna be a diving fight. So they're gonna go after their men and then like attack them and get back the warhead. Basically, we need to catch them red-handed with this warhead so they can't pretend like they didn't know what was going on here. And once they have at least one of the warheads, fuck the Disco Volante, they could just sink it, okay? These are nuclear warheads. They don't go off at the drop of a hat. You have to set them, okay? Just sink the boat. We'll go get the warhead later. Like, it's fine. So here, plan complete. So the captain asks his crew for 10 volunteers for this mission because they don't have underwater weapons. They're in a submarine. They're not supposed to go outside of it, okay? All they got is knives. So he's like, you're bringing a knife to a gunfight. Like, I'll ask who wants to do this with you. Luckily, a bunch of people do volunteer for the mission. James is gonna lead it, and Felix is like, wait a minute, James, if you think you're leaving me on this fucking submarine, you are mistaken. I know I'm missing an arm and a leg, but I can still swim and I can still fight. I'm going. I've got your back, because, you know, they're bros. So now it's time for our big climactic battle at the end of the book. So James and the divers, they're making their way towards, like, the Disco Volante, and they spot enemy divers, which is good because their plan can move forward, but bad because they are vastly outnumbered. And also the bad guys have like little like motor boosters underwater, so they're just zipping along. They're going very fast, and they have spear guns. So James is like, oh no, this is gonna be a bloodbath. Uh-oh. And that's exactly what happens. A big scuba fight breaks out, and it is pretty much a bloodbath. Everyone's stabbing each other and like cutting airways, and there's just a whole thing. It's a lot. And finally, in all of the chaos, James and Largo, they find each other under the ocean, and they're like, oh, it's showtime. We're gonna have our big climactic fight. But the thing is, Largo has a spear gun, and he has a motorized little like underwater scooter. He has a lot of stuff. James has knife. So he's like, ooh, he hides in some coral. He just like, okay, come get me then. Come get me. What are you gonna do? I'm in the coral. You're gonna stab yourself with coral? So this is James' big move. However, Largo still manages to get the upper hand here because, I kid you not, Largo grabs an octopus and he throws it at James's face. So now James has an octopus like around his face mask. He's blind due to octopus body, and he doesn't know what's going on, and like Largo gets him around the neck and he's like choking him, and James is like, well, this is how I die. Great. Octopus to the face. There are so many things with octopus in James Bond books. I don't know. I feel like it's a fetish at this point, but like so many octopuses in so many books. But all of a sudden, Largo lets go. James is like, oh good, I'm not being strangled anymore. He manages, you know, to rip the octopus off his face. And he's like, what's going on? And he sees Largo with like a harpoon sticking through his chest, dead. And he's like, who shot Largo? He looks around and he sees like a girl in the water, you know, the hair is flowing everywhere. She's reloading her spear gun. It's freaking Domino. She's so cool. She just got tortured. She managed to escape. She managed to go get a bunch of gear, including a spear gun, and then dive underwater and shoot her captor. Domino is incredible. And James agrees. He thinks she's the coolest person. He's like, wow, you harpooned a guy. Like, this is, let's go up. Let's go up. Let's take a break. So they swim for the surface, and it's like kind of this big cinematic moment where they just have this bloodbath underwater. They surface, and then the sun rises. It's so dramatic. I kind of love it just for the drama. We cut to maybe a day later. James, he wakes up. He's in the hospital. Obviously, like he's been through some shit that day. And Felix is there, and he basically fills him in on what happened. He's like, hey, guess what? Don't worry about it. Both our governments like convened on the Disco Volante. We got both the warheads, and like, great. We saved the day. We saved the world. Only problem is we still don't have a lead on, you know, Spectre or Blofeld. They have figured out who the leader is Blofeld. They're like, fuck if we know where they are. They split town. I don't know. So, you know, Blofeld lives to villain his way through another day, essentially. And James is like, but okay, great, whatever, cool, we saved the world. Where's Domino? What happened to Domino? And he's just really insistent upon it. Like he's being obnoxious. Where's Domino? And finally the doctor's like, oh my God, okay, fine. She's okay. She's in the room next door. She's recovering. Like, she has a lot of burns, but she's going to be okay. Like, you can go see her for a minute if you behave. And James is like, all right. He gets out of bed and he's like lumbering through the hall because, you know, he's full of heavy sedatives. He's just like drunk in a hallway, and he bursts into her room. He's like, Domino. And she's like, James. And he's like, he immediately like face plants on the floor. The sedatives kicked in all the way, and Domino's just laying in bed, and she's like, she just sighs and rolls over so she can see James on the floor, and she's like, all right, I'll just wait for him to wake up. And then that's how the book ends. Domino is so much cooler than James is. So that was Thunderball, the whole thing. It is my favorite book of the series. There's a lot of good books in this series, but this one in particular is my favorite, mainly because it is so funny at times. And, you know, it has a scuba fight. It happens in the Bahamas. It's got sea creatures. It's got a really badass heroine who I'm obsessed with. So yeah, overall, I really enjoyed this book. Does it have yikes stuff? It does. Everything in this series is gonna be a big yikes. But if you're looking at it purely from like an action adventure standpoint and like storytelling, I think this is really tight and really good and really funny and just enjoyable to read. Like, it's a good time. Let me know in the comments down below, what's a book you like just for vibes? Like, Thunderball is a vibes book for me. I thoroughly enjoy it because, you know, for actual reasons, but also just because it's fun. What's a book you just like because it's fun? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like this video, make sure you give it a like. If you want to see more videos, make sure you subscribe. And if you want cool exclusive content, including early access to videos and a book club, you can consider becoming a channel member or a patron. Links for that are in the description down below. And on that note, I will see you guys soon. Goodbye.